guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Perfect day for some lo-fi beats. Now actually the effects that I'm going to show you are suitable for lo-fi music, but we will apply them to our musical genre. And the thing is that lately I've been listening to a lot of ambient electronic music and also house music. That kind of house music where you have very warm pads and sometimes lo-fi type of sounds. And so I got inspired to try to push my sounds in that direction. On top of that, I went to a party a week ago here in Padua where Yarku and Gabro were playing, and they did an incredible set where they mixed, they experimented a lot, I think, on the decks. They really enjoyed it, and they moved from electro to techno to house music, and the sound was warm and groovy. And so I really came home with I want to push my sounds, to get closer to that feeling. The track that came out is not in that style that they played, but still I got inspired in some way. If you know the track, please let me know in the comments, because I really want to know what track is this. Here is a project. I'm going to show you a project that is one of the quickest projects that I do, because I finished the track in a day or two, and it happened while I was experimenting with Zenk's pack, the pack that he shared with the Patreon community for April. It's something that I tried few sounds, and I got that inspiration, and that led me to close the track very quickly. So that's a very cool thing when you experiment with a pack that can first give you inspiration, and second, the inspiration move in a direction which was pretty different from what I'm usually doing with what the type of music that I do, because this is a sort of breakbeat track. And other than loops, there are also these long pieces of recordings that you can take and sample a few parts of it and use just the parts that you like. So this gives you a lot of freedom. If you are interested in the pack, you find the link in the description. You can join us on Patreon. And if you want some of the older packs that I shared on Patreon, you find them in my website, link still in the description. So speaking of long samples, I actually got the inspiration from one of them. So it was this long evolving sample. Okay, so what I did was simply slicing it using the slice mode in manual mode, so I could select the slices where I want. Moving from a slice to another, you abruptly move from a part where the filter is set in a certain mode to another part where the filter is more open, or the sound is doing something different. And so this is what came out. You see the slices move here. Okay, and this leads me already to a certain type of feeling, and gave me some ideas for what I wanted to really do with my track. So I will quickly show you the main part of the track. I also added this arpeggio. So that's the track. I want to quickly show you the samples and the loops that I use from the pack. So the first one was that pad that I modified, as you hear. The second one was this amazing loop, still from the sample pack from Zenk. As you can see, it's a 16 measures loop, so it's a very long one, and it keeps changing a little bit. There are ear candies that come and go, so very good to have such long loops. So the third loop is this one here, which I added to have some mid-high percussions. Another sample is this one, but it was simply a one shot. The last one I think is this one here, which adds some high frequency content. I said I wanted to look for some warmth in my sound, so the first plugin that I experimented with is the RC20 Retro Color. Probably you've already heard about it. It's a plugin that it's been around for a while, and I had it in my plugins library for a while, but I never got it into it that much. So the first place where I used it is actually my pad here, the main pad. So if we go check the pad without the Retro Color, it's still warm, but Retro Color add these artifacts, add a little bit of warmth, modifies a little bit the stereo image, and also add that sound in the high frequencies, that modulating sound that I really like, and that is a bit crusher in a few words. Basically, it's a plugin that wants to emulate all of those artifacts and noises that are introduced when you are using analog gear. So noises, wow and flutters from tape machines, but also adds what happens when you convert your signal from analog to digital. So the first module is the noise module. So as you can see, you can emulate all of the noises from analog gear, but also studio ambience, as you can see, Apollo lunar lander. So there are also some kind of weird noises that you can emulate. The second one is to emulate the tape machines, wow and flutter. So what happens when the tape goes faster or slower, so the pitch goes up and down a little bit. So these imperfections. The third module is the distortion module. You can have different types of distortion, tube distortion, transformers, crunch, and others. The third one is for bit crushers. So basically, when you convert analog to digital, the conversion can be high quality like it is nowadays, but it can also be low quality, so 8-bit, 12-bit bit depth, but also sample rate can be reduced, and this basically increase this imperfection in the sound. If we just check this single effect, okay, you can hear these noises on the high frequencies, which are typical of the aliasing and all those kind of artifacts that are introduced with analog to digital conversion. Then we have just a reverb module, and last but not least, this whir flutter is just emulating what happens to the tapes when you keep recording on the same tape, and the quality of the recording degrades, and so you have some drops in the volumes and things like that. So it's another interesting one. The cool thing here are the presets. There are quite a lot, and they are quite interesting. You can get creative with them. So what I choose for this sound is the VHS preset, but you can have vinyl noise. Okay, so there is quite a lot of stuff. The only thing that I notice is that usually the noise is quite loud in all of the presets, so I tend to take it down a little bit, because especially if you put this effect on many channels, the noise sums up, and then the track would become too noisy. Okay, so keep it under control. This is a quite standard way to use it. You have a pad, you want to warm it up, but there are also more, let's say, creative ways to use it. So for example, if I put it on this loop here, I tried it here, RC20. So if I switch it on, this is the retired amp preset, and it works like a filter, but you can also have some noise that adds right on the transients. So that's how the noise works in this case, and this is due to the follow parameter. Basically, follow parameter follow the envelopes of the sound. This, it's always on, and this is very good for drums. But you could start, since I start the track with a closed filter, when I introduce this, I could do an automation here. in a sort of transition to a clearer sound. The second effect that I used is another effect that you probably heard about. It is called Decimort. Decimort is a big crusher, so is a kind of a simpler effect compared to the RC20. RC20 had one of the modules which was a big crusher, but this is just dedicated to big crushing, so to the conversion from analog to digital and all the artifacts that are generated. This effect, I've read the manual, and you need a bit of advanced knowledge about the analog to digital conversion concepts, but I can quickly explain the three parts. The first part is this one, the quantizer, and it's dedicated to the bit depth, so how the amplitude of the sound is translated from analog to the digital world. The second part is the resampler, and is dedicated to how the sampler is how the analog signal is approximated in the digital world in time, so the way it's converted in time, not in amplitude but in time. And the third part is simply a filter. Here you have the presets, etc. So the effect that I used first is on my hi-hat, and I used the MPC60 preset. MPC60 is the Akai sampler that you know. It was characterized by a 12 bits conversion, and the sample rate was 40 kilohertz or a little bit less. Here it's set to 35. I like it because it adds a bit of body to the sound, and it takes away a little bit of the super high frequencies. Let's check the difference. This is without. This is with. Without. With. So you can hear the sounds thickens up a little bit, and in the mix it's good. It sounds good. Okay, the second sound is the same identical hat, but I simply used different preset, and this got me into a more creative way of using this effect. So this is what happens. Okay. So I used the preset called Overdrive the Middle, and then I automated with the LFO, the knob, the resampler knob, so that it acts like a filter that opens and closes. And you can hear it without that sound, with the sound. So I first used it as a filler, as a fill in some transitional points like here. And so you can scroll through the different presets. They are very good. You can get creative with them. Now, the question is for sure, are these plugins worth? Because RC20 is about 100 euros. Decimort is around 45 or 50 euros. So they're not super expensive, but for a big crusher, it can be a little bit of expensive. So the question is if you really need them. For sure, Decimort is a simpler effect than RC20, and it can be easily replicated with Ableton stock effects. Maybe not at the same quality, but you can still get there with Ableton stock effects. In fact, if we check the first sound that we have here, this one, the resolution here is at 12. So I took Redux, which is the big crusher from Ableton. I put the beats to 12, and then the sample rate is 35 and something. So I put it as 35 kilohertz. If we check the difference, it's quite similar. You can hear that this as well take down the highs and enhance the mid frequencies, and it's very close. The other example that we have on the other hat is a bit more complicated because there is also filter modulation, but if we take away the filter modulation, I created the same thing on the Redux. Let's have a look. This is the Ableton one. This is the Decimort. I mean, it's not the big difference. You can do similar things with Ableton stock plugins. Retro Color, on the other hand, has a bit more features, and the number of presets it has and the number of combinations that you can do with the different modules is something a bit more. You know, if you want to reproduce it with Ableton stock stuff, I mean, you might be able to do it, but it takes more time. So I think Retro Color gives you something which is more than just a big crusher. And so if I had to choose, I would surely go with Retro Color. If you are interested in any of those plugins, you find the link in the description. They are affiliated link, so if you buy them, I get a bit of a percentage of the purchase that supports my channel. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. I hope as usual that it gave you some inspirations or ideas on how to use these effects in your tracks. If you are here for the first time, consider subscribing to the channel and say hi in the comments. I'll see you next time.